Hello friends. I read these books for the first time probably over 50 years ago. The only exception is the Nicholas book, which came out when I had finished my apprenticeship. And I didn't read them much in the interim between then and now. But now that I'm rereading them, it's fascinating to see how much my golf teaching evolved matching many of the things that are in there, and it makes you wonder whether they influenced me or that I found these things by myself, and they're just characteristics of effective teaching, which all of these people of course understood brilliantly. One of my favorite books is one I haven't mentioned a lot before, by a wonderful author called Percy Boomer. He was born in 1885 is my recollection. And he was one of the early members of the PGA. His father was a school teacher in the Isle of Jersey and actually became a golf pro after his son did, some many years later. Also had the particular notability of being the teacher of Harry Vardon and his brothers and a couple of other very notable great golfers from the end of the 19th century. So Percy Boomer had a lovely sort of intellectual approach to teaching. And he was actually interested, as am I, in actually explaining how one should teach. So one of the very interesting features of this, because I've already mentioned with regard to Harry Vardon's book, that in that particular epoch, they were taking the club away low and inside, and very little reference was made to going in to out, an expression that I described in another video. And in fact, the first well-known example of the recommendation in to out is, of course, Ben Hogan's book. But this predates it. He was determined that an in to out swing, in other words, a swing which went through the ball from this side of the target line through the ball to that side of the target line, was the way it should feel. Now, he emphasized feel because he thought that learning golf was to learn how to feel both in the way you stand and in the way you motion so that you can replicate it under pressure. I couldn't agree more. So he had a very particular way of asking you to posture yourself. And that brings me to the issue, which is how to aim. The conventional wisdom in golf suggests that there are some basics to which we should always return when things are going wrong, and which should be established with somebody new to the game right at the beginning. And they are basically grip, posture, ball position, and aim. Now, grip and posture make perfect sense, and he had very particular, I think, valuable views about how to establish that. But with regard to aim, I think that it's premature. And in fact, reading this, you'll see that he actually had the same idea, because he thought that the ideal shape of shot, as do I, is what I call a climbing draw. He called it a slight pull draw, a ball that bends gently to the left, having already started a yard or two to the left. And I think he's entirely right. It's the best starting bid for a golfer, even if you ultimately find benefit in fading the ball. And the reason is simple. It moves the swing away from the natural default, which is to have everything lag behind, slump down and hit fat, weak and high and right. So even though there are as many trees on the left-hand side of the course as on the right, it's better to favor a swing which trends in that direction. Ben Hogan, of course, would have disagreed. He could only start winning when he fixed hooking. Anyway, so with regard to aim, the idea, and you see it all the time at the driving range, and people even carry these sticks in their bags now, these fiberglass sticks, plastic sticks, which they use for alignment. And so people have got clubs on the ground and they're generally looking at their feet and saying the line across my toes is correct and therefore the ball position is correct, everything's lovely. Here's my objection. If you aim first but with a less than perfectly well-formed golf swing, you're essentially going to have to maintain that less than well-formed swing to get the ball to go where you've predetermined it to be aimed. In other words, it's virtually impossible to improve past that point because you've locked yourself in. So both Percy Boomer and I think that the thing to do is to go for that perfect quality of hit. And you know when you hit a good one, you just do. And then you ask yourself, can I do it again? Can I do it harder? Can I do it with other clubs? Can I do it under pressure on the golf course? And that's exactly how you should learn. So one of my videos recommended teeing the ball up high with an 8 iron, something one would normally never do, and hitting on the toe at half speed, high pull draws to generate a feeling, what he preferred, a feeling of hitting the ball correctly. Then can you replicate it? Can you take away the tee? Can you go harder, change clubs, etc.? And when the answer is yes, only then should you ask yourself, is it landing? Because they're all landing in the same place if they're hit that well. Are they landing where I want them to land? And only then, if the answer is no, should you change your aim. And you don't stay where you are to change your aim, because that would be geometrically inappropriate. It would change the ball position. You actually think of a clock face. And let's say you've been standing at 6 o'clock. If you want to aim to the right, you subtly move around to 6:30. Sorry. And so you start moving around the circle to change the orientation of what really matters, which is the line across your shoulders. And one last idea about that. Ball position is intimately linked to the shoulders, because if I, particularly with a driver, move the ball over by my left foot, which the driver requires, it's out of your field of view, so you don't see that the shoulders are now aimed left. Well, if they're aimed to the left, even though the ball looks correctly placed vis-a-vis the feet, it's actually opposite your right shoulder, which means that it's a too steep down blow and it's traveling offline. And if you guide, it goes into some Scotsman's back garden on the right side of the golf course. And so getting the line across the shoulders is correct, but long before then, establish the really well hit ball and replicate it.